If we bat first, I don't think it's the end of the world against this Australian team because their strength is their bowling.
Well, that's pretty full, that's pretty close, and that's out. Will they be asking the third umpire to get involved?
Hello and Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to a new episode of the Third Umpire podcast. I'm Ali and this is Ali. Today we're going to be talking about the semi-finalists. We're also going to be focusing on Pakistan's performances.
So I think we couldn't have asked for a better, semi-final stage. 4 best teams of the tournament. You could make an argument for South Africa maybe, but England looked dominant. Australia have pulled through. New Zealand have been the second best team in our group, and obviously Pakistan have blown everyone away. So I think it's going to be a cracker of a semi-final stage. I'm very, very excited because this tournament so far hasn't been the most exciting from a neutral point of view, but I'm sure that that's going to change during the semi-finals and the final. What are your thoughts?
Why do you say it hasn't been exciting from a neutral point of view?
Just from there haven't been as many close games, like as many thrillers as some of the other World Cups. Obviously, from a Pakistani perspective, I've loved it because Pakistan have played so well. But it's not over yet, is what I'm saying. A few teams like Bangladesh have failed to show up, West Indies have failed to show up, which was a little disappointing. And India even sort of failed to show up, so that sort of made it a little less exciting. But now that the best 4 teams are going through, I think we're going to get some amazing matches.
Interesting. Just a quick word on South Africa's performances of late. I feel that, the way that, because traditionally when you look at tournaments, world tournaments, you see that a team that takes a hit, and when they come back from that and then they start performing as a team, they're a formidable force. We saw this in the 92s with Pakistan winning the World Cup as well. We've seen it even if you look at the most recent PSL as well. So, and just normal domestic tournaments as well. That's one factor that Pakistani fans as a whole have been sort of concerned about. And that is that we've been winning throughout the tournament, consistently. Which is good because, if you look at Australia's, one of their previous tournaments as well, which they won, they were undefeated as well through to the final. So we could look at them for inspiration.
I have a lot of sympathy for South African fans to beat the tournament favorites in England, lose only one sort of close match and still get knocked out. I think I would be very disappointed, but at the end of the day, the rules are the rules, and they failed to chase in enough. I think they took 14 overs to chase 80 odd against Bangladesh, and that really hit their run rate. So, at the end of the day, the rules are in front of us, and if you don't have the correct enough run rate compared to other, like Australia in this case, then you're not going to go through. So it is what it is. Regarding what you said about Pakistan being undefeated and that being kind of scary, I don't believe in that personally. Like you mentioned, there's been many instances where teams have just dominated Australia in the 2003 and 2007 ODI World Cups, didn't lose a single match. So there's no need to worry about these things and, get all superstitious like there should be one loss. I don't believe in that. If you can dominate the whole tournament, that's even better in my view. And I don't think this comes back to a larger point, but I don't think this is one of those, unpredictable sort of mercurial Pakistan teams that are just going to lose one day. I think this has been a very clinical, very consistent, prepared Pakistan team. So I'm glad that we won all our games. We have the confidence going through in the semi-final against Australia, and we're on a hot streak. So might as well, keep it undefeated throughout the tournament.
Agreed. Interesting that you mentioned this is a different Pakistan team. The reason why I brought this up was because you've spoken about how we've won all 5 games. But looking at it from a different aspect, the team has gelled together in a completely different manner, separating us from the teams in the other. Let's look at T20 right now. In the other T20 World Cups, where as you've mentioned the word mercurial, what makes this team not unbeatable, but what makes this team gel so well as compared to the units in 2016, 2014? I wanted to ask you, what makes Babar Azam's team this year different from the other captains' teams?
I think what makes it different is a few of the individuals in it. People like Babar and Rizwan specifically. These are not like a lot of the Pakistani players of old who are just going to get complacent. They're extremely dedicated and they demand a lot from themselves and they demand a lot from their teammates. Like Babar, he's not going to be happy with misfields and inconsistent batting and stuff like that. He wants everyone to bat at his level. and everyone to show up. Rizwan is so dedicated, the most dedicated Pakistani player I've ever seen, and that sort of creates these role models within the team for these other players. And then you have senior players like Hafiz and Malik, and then you cannot discount the role of this new coaching staff. I know it's only been a few days, but based on what I've seen in videos and stuff, the way they approach the team, the mindset, stuff like that, the way Saklan, I remember after the India game, what Saklan was doing was he was actually congratulating and getting the players to clap for the bench players first. And I think that does a lot for the mindset of this whole team. So I think this is a very different Pakistan team overall from any we've ever seen.
You've mentioned Saklan and you've mentioned the recent coaches. I agree with you. They have to be given a lot of credit, and where credit's due, clearly, because they've managed to make an ordinary team, or let's say a team that wasn't firing in each department, a team that's now firing as a unit. But what are your thoughts on Misbah ul Haq and Waqar Yunus? Because they left the team at this moment. People can argue that this was really crucial for Team Pakistan, but let's not forget the hard work that they put in. And I know we've mentioned this in previous podcasts about how Waqar Yunus and Misbah ul Haq have done extremely well. But how much credit would you give them for the team that has showed up throughout this tournament so far?
I think that a lot of factors go into it, and people who say that, oh no, Waqar and Misbah left, so now we're doing well, I think that's wrong too. I think we need to be a little more neutral. Waqar and Misbah have, like, let's look at Rizwan as an opener as an example, and let's look at Asif Ali. Without Misbah, these two things wouldn't have happened. Misbah really backed Rizwan to open in T20s. A lot of people don't like to hear that, but that's true. Without him, who knows where Rizwan would be batting, and who knows what our success would be like. And then you look at Asif Ali. Press conference after his amazing innings against Afghanistan, he credited Misbah the most out of anyone. So you have to be neutral. Obviously I don't agree with everything that Misbah and Waqar did as coaches. There was a lot of bad stuff as well, but you have to give credit where credit is due, and they did a lot of good. And then, you can go further back. Look at what Sarfraz, for example. I think he was very important. He gets a lot of hate, but I think he was very important in setting a lot of this foundation for this team we see now. That 2016 period when he became captain, and Mickey Arthur as well. Who knows what kind of a batsman Babar Azam would be if some random coach was there, when Babar debuted. So Mickey backing Babar like that, I don't think Babar would have turned out to be the batsman he is without Mickey. So I think there's a lot of cooks that go into this recipe personally, and a lot of people deserve credit, but the immediate credit obviously goes to Saklan, Philander and Hayden.
Yeah, we've spoken about Mickey Arthur right there, and then we can look at his coaching staff, where you have Steve Rickson as well. The reason why I mention these two coaches are because recently we've seen off late, one factor that does differentiate this Pakistan team from the past ones is the fielding aspect. You can look at the work that Steve Rickson and Mickey Arthur did put in, and what does that tell you? I mean, what does that tell you about the transition that Pakistan has made in giving fielding so much like that importance that it deserves? Because in the past, Pakistan would win games primarily based on their bowling, even some matches on their batting, but now you can't look at our team without admiring the fielding. So what's your take on our improvement in fielding in recent times, primarily due to, for instance, Steve Rickson or Mickey Arthur? How much of a difference has that made?
Of course, like fielding in the modern day is essential. It's not even optional. Good fielding. And we still have a long way to go in terms of fielding compared to sides like South Africa and New Zealand and those, but we'll get there. So this cultural shift, it's necessary. Before, we used to have 2 or 3 good fielders, and then you would have to hide everyone else in the field. So now that you don't have to do that, you can see that Babar sometimes fields at the boundary, right? Because now he has the option to do that. Before, if you had, for example, Irfan, Rahat Ali, Junaid Khan, these types of fielders, you would have to hide them. So then Babar wouldn't have good fielders like Babar, Malik, Fakhr. They wouldn't have the flexibility to field in those hot spots. So that's very important, I feel. And in general, like I said, these dedicated Pakistani players like Rizwan, who are always working on themselves, that creates sort of like a top-down like cultural shift within the country. People are going to look at this fielding side, they'll be like, हाँ मुझे भी अपनी fielding पे अब थोड़ा काम करना है.
You spoke about always working on yourself, and I think that's also a really important tool within this Pakistan team, because today, for example, we're just recording this video right when the Pakistan-Scotland game has just finished. You saw Babar Azam's innings, and when he got out, he was absolutely gutted. And this does fall in line with constantly improving, and perfection is something that you can never, it's never achieved. You always aim to achieve more of it.
Yeah.
So that is one difference as well, and perhaps an essence of that, or perhaps some reason for that, could be the humility that does exist within our batting lineup, especially, if you look at Babar, and you've constantly spoken about Rizwan here as well. I mean, the credit that these two deserve, because one thing could be winning the Champions Trophy, giving up. One thing could be being the number one T20 batsman, giving up. Now number one ODI batsman. But he's constantly aiming to improve himself, right?
Yeah.
And this just speaks volume. Hopefully, and we've spoken about this in our past podcasts as well. But the way, anyone that can make the number one in Test ranking is truly a great of the game. So, that's one thing left for Babar to conquer.
There.
What are your thoughts on that?
One thing let's just talk about Babar's captaincy before moving on to Pakistan versus Australia. But Babar's captaincy has been, I always backed Babar as captain, because your best player, a lot of people were, criticizing his captaincy at the beginning. But you have to realize, I think Shoaib Malik said this a few days ago in one of those, ground interviews. He said captaincy is one thing that you grow into. And Babar has really, really, sort of rapidly been improving his captaincy. And it's not just his on-field captaincy that's very exciting to watch. It's the way that he leads the team in terms of, whether you look at the team selection, everyone knows that Babar really fought for Hafiz and Malik to be in this team. As outsiders, we could be like, no, why does he want these senior players in the team and all of that? But he wanted to build his own team and lead his own team and be accountable for his own team's performance. And that says a lot about a captain. And he doesn't want to cave into, what the media are saying or what outside forces are saying. He wants to build his own team and he wants to go forward. So that gives me a lot of hope for the future as well. Yeah,
you spoke about Malik and Hafiz as well. I just want to address a point related to that before we move on to the semis. I want to talk about having, or as Rizwan said it, ticking each box. So you have, for instance, Babar and Rizwan that have clicked. You have Shaheen that has clicked. Of late, you have Hafiz that has clicked as well.
Haris has clicked.
Malik, Haris, Rauf has clicked. Hassan Ali.
Asif Ali.
But Asif Ali as well. So it's really important, and I feel that's one of the reasons why Babar has stuck with the same 11 throughout. It's because he wanted a certain amount of boxes to be ticked and everyone to be firing. Just to go into that form in the event that the top order that doesn't click, then you have the bottom order and the middle order that can, embrace the challenge. So that is perhaps one difference that I do see within this team as well. And also one more thing, many people were speaking about dropping a batsman. I feel that number one, I feel you shouldn't, in such a short tournament, you shouldn't drop a batsman if they're going through a purple patch, because for a batsman, what's better than to, consistently score runs. And also for a batsman that's not firing, I feel it's imperative to give him that confidence. We saw today with Hafiz as well. He performed extremely well, and with Malik especially, with the amazing knock he made off 18 balls, right? So do you agree that perhaps, when it comes to resting players, I feel perhaps a fast bowler, perhaps Shaheen, could be rested, but then you can look at it through this angle where you feel that T20 it's only 4 overs. For us to say 4 overs it's nothing, but for the bowler, there's an immense load on his body as well. But you can just see from the passion that Shaheen does have that he doesn't want to miss any game. He wants to compete for being perhaps one of the highest wicket takers of the tournament. So I just wanted to ask you about, do you feel that perhaps in this most recent game we could have dropped Shaheen for Wasim Jr., given Shaheen a rest, or do you feel is there any player that Pakistan could have rested in this last game?
I think that on principle your semi-final is in 3 days. I think it would be a disaster to go with it would have been a disaster to change anything against Scotland. If you were going to make any changes, you had to do them against Namibia. not Scotland, because you're so close to the semi-final. I think that's going to throw everything off. Like we spoke about, this team is so gelled. Some people were saying that maybe we should drop Fakhr, but then you have to look at specific player roles as well. Fakhr isn't someone like we've noticed this. He's not going to come out every game, score 30, 40 runs every single game, right? But he is going to win you that one match. And you have to keep banking on that. You have to keep backing him. If we beat Australia in the semi and he still doesn't perform, you still play him in the final, because he's that type of player who's gonna single-handedly win you one match. And that in a semi-final or final is just invaluable. You spoke about fast bowlers being rested. Shaheen is someone who likes to keep his rhythm going. In such a short tournament, an intense tournament, I think it's okay to make him play all the games. I don't care who the opposition is. God forbid we dropped him in this game and he sort of like lost his rhythm a little bit. How bad would that have been, you know? So now that we're so close to the semis, no need to make any changes. Just hope that everyone comes through. Hassan, again, you know, people are being too critical of Hassan. Hassan is your match winner. With the bat as well, he can come good. And with the ball, he's been picking up key wickets. People haven't been noticing that. He's been picking up key wickets in the beginning of his spell. Obviously, the opposition batsmen are going to target some bowler, right? They're not going to let every single bowler bowl. And Hassan has been that target, and that's okay. He still hasn't been that bad. He hasn't been at his best, but he can, if he shows up in one of those games, just like Fakhr. He's Fakhr with the ball. If he shows up in one of those two games, he'll win you the game single-handedly. Hassan is... Do not underestimate the importance of Hassan in this team.
Yeah, just a quick word. I mean, 2 points you mentioned. One of them I don't agree with 100%. One of them I do. Hassan Ali, 100% I agree. I feel he's... I mean, you can't drop him, especially of the form he's been in of late.
No.
And he does offer that batting option as well. And he's a good fielder, so you can't take any of that out. 100%, I agree with you. And especially in one match he didn't perform extremely well, one of our recent matches, but he was one of the only bowlers to have a maiden over in the game, so that's just completely off the charts. That's extremely impressive. You mentioned one thing about Shaheen Afridi being in really good rhythm. I have to disagree with that, because the way I look at it, for a fast bowler, you can, okay, if this was an ODI game, I think perhaps my argument would have more weightage, but the way I look at it is like this. He was a bowler that had extremely good rhythm against India, right? We can all agree on that. After that game, he hasn't really picked up extremely well. He has been not expensive, but a tad off what his standards are. So you can, I mean, the way I look at it is slightly, because see, when you're winning, many things aren't really scrutinized and looked into that much detail. We've spoken about how Babar is a perfectionist, how he's willing to examine and try to fix everything. Looking at Shaheen Afridi, perhaps you spoke about how not being in his rhythm, we could have missed out on that. The way I look is like this, you know, a bowler, you spoke about the next game being in 3 days. This could be a much needed rest, because for us it's just 4 overs to watch, but for the bowler there's immense load, immense pressure on his body to fire as well, you know, to get those wickets, to produce balls at 145 clicks. So the way I look at it is like this. You could have given another bowler a go, even if he'd got 4 or 5 wickets. Of course, you know, Shaheen's your main bowler, but just to have that load of Shaheen perhaps. But I mean, once again, Pakistan won the game. I just hope this doesn't backfire going into the next game, where our bowlers have already had so much strain on them. I hope it doesn't, but I mean, let's see. Should we
That's
move on?
That's a fair point. It's just some people who are close to Shaheen, a lot of people, you know, that I've spoken to, and, you know, a lot of people have said this. This is more of a mental thing, but he's the type of player who just doesn't want to sit out. Like, he wants to bowl in every game, and I feel like maybe there was a slight risk, you know, you rest him and mentally he just doesn't, you know, he doesn't like it, and you don't want to like piss a fast bowler off like that either, you know. So sometimes you have to, if he's your best bowler, you know, you sort of like give him some leeway. So I get where the management is coming from. We can move on to Pakistan, Australia now.
And the only reason why I mention that is because many times, you know, if you've read Shoaib Akhtar's book and you've listened to his interviews as well, he spoke about how fast bowler has to be managed perfectly or extremely closely. You know, because there's immense load, especially nowadays playing all 3 formats. So 100%, if the bowler, like so many times Shoaib Akhtar himself wished that he would be dropped for some games, you know, and only be given a few overs or not given a full practice session compared to the other bowlers. We can argue that he had a different body or a different requirement compared to other bowlers, right? But 100% going back to this point, Shaheen did want to play, and that's perhaps why he did play, and that's the best reason. As you spoke about the mental aspect of the game, it's really important to consider these attributes of the game. Let's move on to the next game that Pakistan has, Australia. For me, perhaps the way I look at it, I see Adam Zampa is in amazing form. That's something that's going to be a difficult task for Pakistan, right, to negotiate that. Then you have David Warner, that's also in good form. Stephen Smith is your anchor batsman. He can take the game through. Marcus Stoinis, we saw in a recent game, he played extremely well. He's a good finisher. And the bowlers have been on point. Josh Hazlewood is amazing. The way that he's successfully managed to transition from being an amazing test match bowler to now being a fantastic T20 bowler is something to watch. And it's a good example for how, people constantly argue that a test match bowler can't be a T20 bowler, but this is the perfect transition. Looking at it, and perhaps Shaheen Afridi has also showed how you can transition from a test bowler to a T20 bowler, as he's in the top 8 rankings of the ICC test bowlers. So what are I've mentioned some of them, but what else do you see in the Australian side that could pose a threat to Team Pakistan?
So in Australia, for me, against Pakistan, the main threat is actually going to be their pace attack. We have batsmen who play spin well. But more specifically, Hazlewood is one bowler who I can see troubling both Rizwan and Babar. I think Babar and Rizwan can play Stark, they can play Cummins, but Hazlewood isn't going to give Rizwan those short balls, that India, if you remember, were giving him. He pulled like 20 deliveries to the boundary. Hazlewood is going to bowl that tight line outside off stump that is going to be a little difficult for Babar and Rizwan to negotiate. So I think if they can see off Hazlewood, if they can, not lose a wicket to Hazlewood, then they can potentially attack Stark and Cummins even. And of course, we all know Australia's fifth bowler is their weakness. And we know that we saw how well Malik played the spinners today against Scotland. So I can see Malik bashing Zampa as well. As good as Zampa has been in this tournament, we have the spin hitters. The main threat for me will be that pace attack. Who do we target? Who do we see off? Because I can see our team struggling a little bit because they are world-class pacers, all three of them. And then in the batting, I'm actually not that scared of Australia's batting personally. I don't think they have a lot of depth. I'm scared of Warner up top. Warner can be dangerous. He's a match winner. We all know that. And he beat us. He's the one who played that match-winning knock against us in the 2019 ODI World Cup as well. So Warner historically likes playing against Pakistan a lot in Test cricket, in ODIs, in T20s, in all formats. So the key will be getting those wickets at the top against Australia, and I feel like we can contain them after we do that.
Good point. Also, if Aaron Finch gets going, you never know. I mean, the man is destructive. Maxwell. We haven't spoken about Maxwell, but that's that extremely scary. 100%. But one thing going for us is the sides both know each other.
I want to bust one myth. So a lot of people have been making this argument. Oh man,
is this the previous World Cups when Michael Hussey came? Is that the myth?
Sort of. So people have been saying it's Australia, like it's scary. They're too good in knockout matches. But I think people are really mixing up their great 90s and 2000s ODI teams with their T20 performance. So I just want to talk about this myth. I want to bust this myth. People are saying that Australia, we're so scared. Dar rahe hain Australia, knockout mein nahi haarti and all of that. But I think people are really confusing this with their 90s and 2000s great ODI teams. That team was unbeatable in knockout games. They won every single World Cup. They won 4 World Cups, 2 of them flawlessly. But if you look at T20 cricket, Australia hasn't won a single T20 World Cup. And all the knockouts that they've played, they've lost. The 2010 World T20 final, they lost to England. The 2012 World T20 semi-final, they lost, and so on, So this myth that Australia is some crazy team in T20 knockouts, you cannot base that off of their ODI team. There's a reason they haven't won a T20 World Cup. So this Australian team is very beatable, and this Pakistani team will know that. And furthermore, to say that, Pakistan has never beaten Australia in any knockout. 1987 ODI World Cup semi-final, 1999 World Cup final, 2015 World Cup semi-final, and then the famous 2010 World T20 semi-final where Hussey won them the match. You can't really base things off of that. That Hussey innings was a freak occurrence. That's not something you can plan for, right? Like, you need 18 in the last over. Your best bowler, he hits like three, four sixes. You can't plan for that. So there's no need to be afraid of stuff like that.
Who bowls a spinner in that penultimate over?
That's true as well. But to be fair, it was Ajmal. It was Ajmal at his almost peak.
It's that over. I mean.
Yeah.
Anyways,
obviously,
that's something that's
But that's
I
what
completely
that's
agree
what
with you.
I'm
It's a
saying,
different
that,
team.
like,
It's a different
exactly,
team. Right now,
different
Pakistan have a
team,
different team as well. And we've
different
spoken about the
occasion.
changes within the team. We have a more
Exactly.
aggressive captain. You have an aggressive
Yeah.
team. Your fielding is one of your core strengths, basically.
So I think the key will be, like I said, the game plan against Australia. You win the toss, you bowl first. But supposing you don't win the toss, they're gonna bowl first. You're gonna bat
That's why
first.
it's such a benefit that Pakistan in the past two games did bat first, because
Yeah.
they were getting that they try to be prepared in case
Set a target
in the
yeah.
event of not winning the toss first. So I think
Yeah.
that is brave captaincy on Babar's part and smart thinking. I just feel Matthew Hayden is a
Yeah.
tool. I mean, he's going to be immensely important regarding our next clash that we have with Australia.
Yeah.
He's going to give us some insight into their team, how they perform, and I think we spoke about the winning teams of Australia in the past, but I think he's perhaps like one
He's a
of the
part of
top
them.
most important factors of the reason why they were so successful.
If we bat first, I don't think it's the end of the world against this Australian team, because their strength is their bowling, I personally feel. So if you can get a good score against them, I feel like you can really strangle this batting lineup. So you lose the toss, no need to panic. You can win both ways. And I genuinely feel like Pakistan are going to make it through to the finals. We spoke about Pakistan versus Australia, the semi-final. And then we'll talk about the England versus New Zealand semi-final in a future video as well. And I hope you guys have enjoyed. Make sure to like the Facebook, make sure to follow on Instagram, and make sure to subscribe as well. Leave a comment, share this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Allah Hafiz.
See you guys soon. All the best. Bye.